Hi, everyone. This is Paul Cooper with the Take Note podcast, and today is currently April 21st. This is podcast number 7, and I want to know if Uncle Sam's stimulating you properly. So this episode is going to cover everything regarding to the stimulus package, payment protection plan, the EIDL, different votes that they're working on, different potential bills that they're working on, and just kind of a little bit of planning to see what we should expect in the future and what you can be doing now to help yourself out. So the first thing we're going to cover is the stimulus check. A lot of you have probably already received this. And the stimulus check is a payment that's being paid out to a lot of Americans, not all of them. There are some eligibility requirements. If you're single, you need to make under $75,000. And if you do, then you'll get the full stimulus payment. If you make more than $75,000, then you need to make to just under $100,000 and you'll get a reduced amount. If you're married, those numbers are doubled. So if you're married and you make under 150K, you should get the full amount. If you make more than 150K but under 200K, then you should get a reduced amount. And those amounts depend on the amount of people in your family. And so it's going to be $1,200 per adult, assuming you're married. Then that means 2 of you, so $2,400. If you're single or unmarried, then you're going to only get $1,200 for yourself. And then you should also get $500 for each child. Now, if you haven't already received your stimulus check, you may be wondering, how do you get it? If you filed your 2018 and or your 2019 taxes with direct deposit and nothing has changed, the bank didn't change your address, stuff like that, then you should get your money direct deposited into your account. Now, this may not happen because some things may have changed. Maybe the address was a little different. There's been a lot of little shenanigans that people have been complaining about. You know, maybe on last year's taxes, it was Main Street and everything was spelled out. And this year, the street's just spelled out to ST, or maybe it's spelled out to ST with a dot. Those little changes are causing some people some issues, and then other people have had a bunch of changes and it hasn't caused any issues. But if this describes you, or if you receive disability, Social Security, some other type of government qualified aid, then you should receive it direct deposit by the end of April if you haven't already received it. Now, if you have an ITIN number, then unfortunately you're probably not going to get a stimulus check because you need to have permanent resident status in the U.S. to qualify. So you don't necessarily have to be a citizen, but you do need to have permanent resident status to qualify for a stimulus check. Now, if you haven't received this yet and you're wondering if you're eligible or not, there's a really quick way that works for most people to find out. So what you want to do is go to your web browser of choice and you're going to type in irs.gov/EIP. And then here we go. You can also just go to the irs.gov website. And the EIP stands for Economic Impact Payments, and that's your stimulus check that everyone's talking about and should be getting. So what you do is you scroll down to Get My Payment, and here's some of the information it says you may need. You may need your 2019 return if filed, or your 2018. So click to Get My Payment. Okay. And so here you just fill out this form, your Social Security number, your ITIN, your date of birth, your street address, and then your zip or postal code. The street address can be the thing that really kind of messes people up. So make sure if you have your taxes filed that you look at how you filed it and make sure it's identical here to what it shows on your taxes, and that'll increase it. You then click continue, and it can take up to several minutes for it to find it, and I'll let you know on the status. I received mine on the 15th, and it let me know that, and I was able to confirm it with my bank account. Some people, it may say it's unable to determine if you're eligible at this time, and you may have to go to a different webpage to see if you're eligible or not. A lot of those people that are eligible, but it's unable to determine their eligibility currently, are probably going to end up getting physical checks later on. And the physical checks do have a schedule that should be starting in May, and some of them are delayed fairly significantly. Like some people may not be getting them till the week of 9/11. That's not really going to help you now since that's a little over 5 months away. But anyways, this is how you can quickly check it to see if you're eligible and to see what the status is. And remember, if you're eligible to get direct deposit, you should get it by the end of April. The next part about the whole stimulus package that we're going to talk about is the PPP, and that stands for the Payment Protection Program. And you have to be eligible for it. There are some requirements, but it's not too hard. So a lot of people think that just because they have a sole proprietorship or they're a contractor, that they're not eligible. That's not true. If you run a business, and even though you're only one person there, and you may be the only person there, you can still get the payment protection program. And the way this works is it's based off of your income or salary that you give yourself. And now you may be thinking, hey, I don't give myself any income or salary. Well, it can also be based off of your distributions and or any dividends that you've paid out. Now, if you don't have any of these, what you can also do is you can take the company income and subtract all of your expenses from it, and then that would determine what you may be eligible for. So it's a good program. It's trying to keep a lot of people employed and working. But here's the bad news. It ran out of money last week. So it's been out of money for over a week now, and it was a good program that was helping people. But we'll get to that a little bit later on. The good news is there's an interim bill vote today that's trying to provide more money for the PPP program and also the EIDL, which we'll talk about here shortly. Originally, the first bill just provided $349 billion, which went out to roughly 1.7 million businesses, or about $2,000 or about $2,053 on average to each business. If I did my math correctly, it was a lot of zeros. Now you may be thinking 1.7 million businesses got a little bit of money. That's not bad. Well, it's absolutely terrible, and here's why. How many small businesses do you think there are in the U.S.? There's currently a little over 30 million small businesses. 1.7 million businesses got on average, if everything was even, a little over $2,000. There's 30 million businesses. So there's 28.3 million businesses that didn't get anything that qualify. So the next bill that's they're hopefully going to vote on today will provide another $310 billion. Awesome. Except what's that going to do? That means roughly 1.51 million businesses will get another $2,053, assuming it goes exactly the same as the previous $349 billion. So again, a huge shortfall. Not even close to all the businesses that need it will be able to get it. And here's the bad part. Most places aren't even letting you apply right now. And then big banks like Chase, Bank of America, and some of these other large Big Ten banks, they have over 100,000 businesses in front of people that filed weeks ago. So that means if you were to file now, and they would let you file now, there's probably hundreds of thousands, if not more, businesses in front of you. So this money for the original bill was gone in a couple weeks. This next batch could honestly be gone in days because they have all these eligible businesses that have already filed and are standing in line. So that's not good. And I hope that really illustrates how little money this almost $660 billion is for all the businesses out there. It's not nearly enough. And to really emphasize that, there are now several lawsuits that are being brought against the government because there isn't enough money for everyone. So now you're going to have some type of discrimination lawsuit or equal opportunity lawsuit against the government because this money was supposed to go out and be available for all these small businesses, but only a super small percentage of these businesses are ever going to get it unless they come up with a lot more money. I mean, trillions of dollars. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do because they've already told people that this money doesn't need to be paid back. It was a grant or it's a forgivable loan. So what are you going to do? You're going to force them to pay later on and violate the contract, or are you going to have to come up with money for everyone else? So it's kind of a weird place for the government to be in. There was a lot of grandstanding and congratulatory, back patting and everything else from our politicians. Like, hey, look at all this money we got together. And really, unfortunately, it's just a drop in a bucket. So they're going to have to do more. The other big program that you've probably heard about is the EIDL, or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Emergency Advance. This is the thing that most people were trying to get, and it's really, really easy to apply for and to be eligible for it. So any small business with less than 500 employees, and I believe that's less than 500 employees per location, was a loophole they had in it. Some businesses in certain industries with more than 500 employees are still eligible for it. It just depends. The government has some standards that they can check against, and it's on the government website. But basically what it allowed you to do was get up to $10,000 of economic relief in the form of a grant. When you hear about the free money, this is the free money, the EIDL. So if you had a business that I believe it had to have been in business and filed before February or early or mid-February this year, then you should be eligible, assuming you're not some giant corporation with thousands of employees. And so there are a lot of people that are eligible, and fraud is absolutely rampant because there's virtually no oversight. They don't verify anything with the IRS, so you just give them information and they don't check it with the IRS because they don't even have you fill out the form you would need to fill out and sign to give them authority to do it. So basically, these are just like the ninja loans from the Great Recession. And if you don't know what a ninja loan is, it's a loan that was subprime offered to borrowers with no proof of income, employment, or other assets. So it was just a blank check, basically, and people were getting qualified on these ninja loans back in the early 2000s and, buying homes that they obviously couldn't afford, and that kind of led to the crisis. So the equivalent here is that you can get up to $10,000 through these grants with virtually no verification of any of your information. So it's nice that it's allowing people to get access to that money quickly, but at the same time, you have people that are going to scam it and take advantage of it. So it's kind of odd. But then again, is it really surprising with our government? The next thing we're going to talk about is the economic stimulus number 4. And we currently have 2 of them that are kind of circulating through Congress that are likely to be the contenders. The most popular and likely version is basically a $2,000 per month stimulus / universal income payment. So this would be $2,000 per month per adult that's 16 years or older. And I believe you had to be 16 years of age or older in January of this year. And these payments would go out for the next 6 to 12 months. And the thing about these is it's $2,000 per adult. So a household with 2 adults in it's going to get $4,000 as opposed to just one $2,000 payment per household. The other option that is less likely, and I really, really hope, and most business owners and investors really hope doesn't happen, is a cancellation of rent and mortgage payments. This version isn't very well thought out, and I'm still reading through it, but I've read most of it. And currently, those payments would not be collected. I believe it's from like March to however many months they determine. Those payments can't be collected. So not only can they not be collected, you can't, ask for it or borrow the people to give you the money that they owe you. You can't charge them fees for it. Interest doesn't accrue. And it can never be collected. So a lot of people thought maybe it'd be like a forbearance. And a forbearance means that you're basically just tacking those payments on to the end of the loan. So you don't pay this next couple of months and we're just adding it on. If you had 10 payments left on your mortgage, you're not losing 2 or 3 months worth of payments. They're just tacking it on to the end. So as opposed to being completely paid off 10 months from now, it would be, 13 months from now because you're not paying currently, and there would be no fees or interest accrued on that. The forbearance wasn't a terrible idea. I mean, it's not great because you have businesses and investors that need to get paid, but at least they're eventually going to get paid. Right now, they're proposing that those payments just kind of vanish, and the government isn't coming in to pay for it. So it's very odd on how that would happen because you're going to have businesses and individual investors and banks that just lose several months worth of payment. I mean, most notes and especially most landlords can't afford to lose several months worth of payments. The standard for landlords to account is really 1 month of vacancy per year. So if this goes on for 3 months, then you just lost 3 months worth of payments. Not only that, you're still going to have wear and tear on the property. So how does that work? It doesn't work very well. And I guess their whole argument is that some of these landlords could get loans from banks right now at 0% interest or possibly forgiven to cover that. It gets really weird, though, on mortgages. So people basically just get 3 months of payments forgiven for their mortgage. It's one of those things that's kind of like a socialist dream that sounds good on paper, but when you actually try to apply it and get a larger worldview of how it's going to knock down all the dominoes, it's not going to work. Now, there are some more parts to the document, and there was a part about landlords, and then there's a part about mortgages and servicers. I haven't been able to finish the mortgage and servicer part. I probably should have read that first, but I didn't. I've read the Landlords section. And so I'll talk about that. And then once I've finished the mortgage and servicing part, I'll probably just make another short, brief update about it. So currently, it states that if a landlord takes a qualifying loan to cover these losses, because they are going to have some loans to cover these losses, but there are a lot of strings attached. Number one, that landlord can't raise rents for 5 years. Not 1 year, not 5 months, 5 years. Now, I could kind of see putting a stipulation in there to not be able to jack up rent rates super high, but not being able to raise them at all for 5 years, that's not going to work very well, because on average, depending on what numbers you look at, our country has a 2 to 5% inflation rate each year. So you're saying that's anywhere from 15 to 25% that they're missing out on. It's actually worse than that, because you got to remember the compounding is going to be each year. So hopefully that makes sense. So it's, could potentially be 30% plus worth of inflation that you don't get an increase for over 5 years. So that's not good. And that's, it's almost basically like rent control. And a lot of people were complaining in jurisdictions that do have very strict rent control that this would make it even worse. The next big thing is you can only get rid of tenants for cause. So let's say the lease expires and you don't want to extend the lease for that tenant because you just, you'd rather get someone else in there. They're a little bit rough or whatever. You can't do that. The tenant gets to keep going in unless you can terminate the lease for cause. So now you have a property that you can't raise the rent on, and you can't control who's really in it. So that's not good. And then the next thing is you must accept Section 8 and other rent assistance programs in the future once these tenants do move out on their own. In theory, that doesn't sound bad, because Section 8 can help a lot of people, which is good. But the problem is it's kind of Section 8 or an FHA loan, which is a first-time home buyer loan. They're very strict on the standards for the building. So some minor things that most people wouldn't care about, they do care about, and you have to change things to meet the standards. Like Section 8, you have to have a ceiling fan in a bedroom for it to be considered a bedroom. So you may have a light in there, it may have a window, it may have a closet, and most people probably wouldn't care. Well, Section 8 does care. You would have to go change it and put in a ceiling fan. There's a bunch of other little things like that just they add up, and then sometimes they can be quite expensive, where you'd have to retrofit a building or house, whatever, with a lot of different changes. So that one sounds good on paper, but again, it could lead to a lot of potential expenses and unforeseen circumstances for the person who accepts that loan. And then the last one is you can't discriminate tenants based on their criminal or economic background. So let's say they just had a bankruptcy. Maybe their credit report comes back and it's just awful. Maybe they're a multiple violent felon. You can't use any of that information in your decision-making process to determine if they're eligible to be in your property or not. That's bad. So not only can you not raise rent for 5 years, you can't get rid of tenants unless it's for cause. You've got to accept Section 8, which could be expensive because you may have to retrofit your house. And then now you can't discriminate tenants based on their criminal or economic background. So basically, you're going to lose complete control of your home or apartments or whatever for the next 5+ years, because you're trying to get a loan to help you cover the losses that the government's going to make you take. I hope it came across how much I think this is a horrible idea, and I really hope this doesn't happen. I'm optimistic because the $2,000 per month stimulus universal income payment has a lot more traction. It's been around longer, and I think that's more likely to get passed. But we'll have to see how our politicians, if they can play nice and actually get some stuff done. But yeah, that would be very rough if you're an investor and or owner. And the problem is everyone thinks of investors or owners as these gigantic conglomerates that have multi-million-dollar apartment buildings. And to some extent, there are some of those. But what people don't realize is most of those aren't just some greedy corporation. Most of those corporations can be REITs or real estate investment trusts. And a lot of them have investor money from people that are retired or nearing retirement, and so they're counting on that money to come to them to help cover their payments and expenses. And so if you're like, oh, we're just going to destroy these evil companies that have all this money, you're actually probably hurting a lot of middle-class people that have saved their money and invested over the years. I don't know if there is a perfect solution. There probably isn't, but I think we can all agree with a little bit of thought there that that one is not a good solution and shouldn't even be on the table. The next part we're going to talk about are tax changes. You may have heard about it. They're making a tax change, and it's for millionaires only. It's not going to help anyone out. And it's for those greedy millionaires that they're weaseling in this during this whole crisis. Well, here's the tax change that people are going to refer to, or that people are referring to when they make these articles and complaints. The actual change is in regard to the NOL, or net operating losses. What this means is it's just an operating loss that a business has had. It means they didn't make money. Maybe they invested in something and it just didn't work out. Usually businesses can only claim this on their current and future year's taxes. It depends on the type of business and the structure. Some businesses can claim more or almost infinite losses currently, and then other businesses can only claim several thousand per year. Individuals can potentially also claim this, and most of the time it'd be like in the form of stock losses or other things like that. Now, don't quote me on this, but I think it's only about $3,000 per year that most businesses and individuals can claim. So if you had a $10,000 loss, it's going to take you 4 years to get that full claim. That takes a while. And so what the code change is allowing businesses to do is they can apply this loss that they've had to previous year's taxes by amending that tax return. So let's say you have this big loss, you can now apply it to several years in the past so you can get that money today. And so it's just allowing businesses to accelerate their losses. It's not some super secret tax payout that you have to be rich to get or anything like that. It's literally just allowing you to write off losses you've already incurred to accelerate it. That way you can get the velocity of capital working for you. So be careful when you read those clickbait titles and different articles saying, tax change for millionaires only. In this case, it isn't. Now, in a lot of cases, these bills will cram super secret stuff in there that most people will miss and only helps a small section of the population. This doesn't, because any business can use this, whether they're small or large. At some point, you're probably going to have some type of loss. And $3,000 limit, depending on the type of business, is pretty low. And especially if you had a large loss, you want to get that money back as much credit as you can from the government as quickly as possible so you can try to invest or hire other people or do whatever for your business. If you'd like further information about the Paycheck Protection Program or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Emergency Advance, you can go to the SBA.gov website, and then you can click on Payment or Paycheck Protection Program or the EIDL and get more information. As you can see here, they're unable to accept new applications for either one because they do not have the funding for it. So keep an eye out for that. You may look at several banks, and if they're local banks, to see if they can help you go ahead and somehow get your application in for when they get more money. But like we discussed earlier, that money's probably going to be gone within days once it's approved, just because there's so many people already in line. That being said, don't get discouraged. Try to get your place in line to see if you can eventually get it, especially for the EIDL, because that's basically free money. If you can get approved for it, that's free money that you should never have to pay back. That's your grant, and it can really help you during these trying times. But anyways, that's it for this episode. Hopefully we'll be able to get further episodes out, and I'm going to try to put out a brief update once I get through the mortgage and servicing part of the stimulus number 4, and just to see how that would apply to us as real estate investors and note investors. If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll try to keep everyone updated on what we're doing and how this stimulus process is going as the government goes through it. But anyways, I hope you all stay safe. Make sure to be careful. I know you're probably getting stir crazy, so do some things to try to get a little bit of stress release, but make sure that you're not being silly and getting yourself in trouble, or you're getting yourself sick. But anyways, we'll talk to you next time, and I hope you all have a good day.